Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we are continuing our study, the second part of this first chapter, anti-material worlds. So let us just do a small recap what we have seen so far. Srila Prabhupada starts the whole book, Easy Journey to Other Planets, by talking about how an article that came in Times in Times of India in 1959 spoke about scientists researching or finding something called the anti-proton. There's a proton which moves one way, an anti-proton. And from that, they made three statements. One is that it means there is another world that is created out of this anti-elements, and they call it anti-matter. And they have a proposition, that if both of these come together, it may crash and destroy each other. So Prabhupada was explaining, Prabhupada is saying that, okay, fine, the scientist definition of anti-matter is just another form of matter. Okay, they say, if you understand this to be a pen drive, and then you understand the anti of this is a remote, but both are matter only. So Srila Prabhupada says the flaw in the modern scientist proposition is that even they are saying that there is an anti-matter that exists, that anti-matter for them is also matter only, a different kind of matter. So Srila Prabhupada goes on to quote what is real anti-matter as given in the Shastras. He gives the history of how the Vedas come, and all the Vedas, the essence is Bhagavad Gita. And then Prabhupada goes on quoting various statements of knowledge of philosophies or shlokas, in fact, from Bhagavad Gita. Like last session we were mentioning, from second chapter, 12th verse onwards, Prabhupada's quoting different ways. So we came to one part of the our reading and study. Let us continue from there. We ended here last time. This is but the beginning of the description of the anti-material particle in the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so what we have seen earlier, some descriptions. It is further explained as follows. So Prabhupada continues on the thread of explaining from the second chapter. The finest form of anti-material particle is engaged within the gross and subtle material bodies. So the real anti-material particle is covered in matter. That means the soul is covered in matter. Although the material bodies, both gross and subtle, are subject to destruction, the finer anti-material particle is eternal. One's interest, therefore, should be in this eternal principle. So I just thought we'll look at the shlokas, because Prabhupada is taking from here and there. So basically, this is like text 17 of second chapter. That which pervades the entire body, you should know to be indestructible. Okay. So like this, Prabhupada is taking the knowledge from different parts of Bhagavad Gita and presenting. So he says that, then we continue. The perfection of science will occur when it's possible for the material scientist to know the qualities of the anti-material particle and liberate it from the association of the non-permanent material particles. So Prabhupada is saying here that we are postulating, theorizing, and presenting about antimatter, but what are the qualities of antimatter? And the success of understanding the qualities is when you can separate matter from spirit, when actually you can free the soul from the engagement of matter, right? Such liberation would mark the culmination of scientific progress, the real science progress. Because if you look at it, we may think we are progressing, we are creating technologies, we are creating different things, but it's just the same thing, isn't it? People are creating big buildings, everyone is doing that, big companies, big cars. But again, when a person dies, again, he has to take birth again. There is a partial truth in the scientist's suggestion, Prabhupada is saying. There's a partial truth in the scientist's suggestion that there may exist also another world consisting of anti-material atoms, and that a clash between the material and anti-material worlds will result in annihilation of both. If you remember, this is the third statement in the beginning of the scientist. So Prabhupada says there is a clash which is continually going on. Prabhupada says, what about when matter and spirit clashes? There is always a clash. There's always a, misnomer between both. The annihilation of the material particles is taking place at every moment, isn't it not? The body is decaying like that. And the non-material particle is striving for liberation. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita as follows. So he's saying it is the non-material particle, which is the living entity, influences the material particle to work. So Srila Prabhupada is saying the non-material particle, which is the living entity, is the one that makes the material to work. So what makes matter move? Spirit. Else, what's the difference between a dead body and a living body? Why the table doesn't move on its own? Right? That'll be creepy. But because it's spirit that's moving matter. This living entity is always indestructible as long as the non-material particle is within the lump of material energy known by the names of gross and subtle bodies. So matter itself is divided into two, gross and subtle. When the living entity is manifest as a living unit, in the continuous clashing between the two particles, the non-material particle is never annihilated. No one can destroy the anti-material particle at any time, past, present, or future. Again, this is just Bhagavad Gita. So we look at text 12 of chapter 2. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future. Neither past, neither present, or future. We are all always individual, always existing. Okay? So no one can destroy this body. That which pervades the entire body you should know as indestructible. Again, text 17, like that Prabhupada is taking. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. The body comes to an end, but the soul does not. Okay. Therefore, we think that the theory that the material and anti-material worlds may clash, resulting in the annihilation of both, is correct only within the context of the scientists' limited definition of antimatter, because they think it's both matter. The Bhagavad Gita, however, explains the nature of the antimaterial particle, which can never be annihilated. Okay. The fine and immeasurable antimaterial particle is always indestructible, permanent, eternal. After a certain period, however, its engagement by material particles is annihilated. The body is slain. This same principle also operates in the case of the material and antimaterial worlds. No one should fear the annihilation of the antimaterial particle, for it survives the annihilation of the material worlds. So even when this world is destroyed, see, neither he who thinks the living entity is the slayer or is slain, because the jiva cannot kill or cannot be killed. For the soul, the antimaterial particle, there is no birth at any time. So how Prabhupada is presenting the Gita knowledge in this small words here, in lower font size here, he's presenting this Gita knowledge in a summary way. Everything that is created is annihilated at a certain stage. Okay. So here also is mentioned, everything that is created will be annihilated. One who is taken birth is sure to die. And after death, there is birth again. So Prabhupada says, both the material body and material world are created, and they are therefore subject to annihilation. The anti-material particle, however, the soul here, is never created and is consequently is never annihilated. This is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada says, the anti-material particle, which is the vital force, the living force, is never born nor created. Ajo, Nityam, Shashvatam, Ayam Purano. These are qualities mentioned in second chapter. It exists eternally. It has neither birth nor death. It is neither repeatedly created nor repeatedly destroyed. Sometimes people think every time there's a new soul created. No, souls are eternal. It is eternally existing, and therefore it is the oldest of the old, Ayam Purano, and yet it is always fresh and new. Although the material particle is annihilated, the anti-material particle is never affected. Right? So like that. Here there's so many different qualities come. The individual, unbreakable, insoluble. Right? The principle is also applicable to the anti-material universe. So Prabhupada says, if the anti-material particle is that powerful, there's also anti-material world. That world is also eternal, as well as to the anti-material particle. So the spiritual world and the spiritual spark, or the spiritual jiva. When the material universe is annihilated, the anti-material universe exists in all circumstances. This will be explained in more detail later. The scientists may learn the following from the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada says, the learned man who knows perfectly that the anti-material particle is indestructible knows that it cannot be annihilated by any means. The atomic scientists may consider annihilating the material world by nuclear weapons, but his weapons cannot destroy the anti-material world. The anti-material particle is more clearly explained in the following lines. So Prabhupada saying that the theory of the clash destroying both. Prabhupada says there's always a clash going on and matter is being destroyed. Antimatter never gets destroyed. It is neither cut into pieces, this antimaterial particle, by any weapons, nor is it burned by fire, nor is it moistened by water, nor is it withered, dried up, nor is it evaporated. It is indivisible, non-flammable, insoluble. Because it is eternal, it can enter and leave any sort of body. Being steady in constitution, its qualities are always fixed. And it is inexplicable because it is contrary to all material qualities. It is unthinkable by the ordinary brain. It's very amazing. It is unchangeable. Therefore, no one should ever lament for what is eternal. These are all just a bunch of verses, right? Prabhupada is taking here. Let's look at it. So you can see from here, Achedyoyam Madhayoyam, it's mentioned here. The soul can never be cut by any pieces of weapon. It cannot be burned by fire. It cannot be moistened by water. It cannot be withered by the wind. It is unbreakable, insoluble. It cannot be burned. It cannot be dried. It is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, right? The soul is invisible. It cannot be understood, inconceivable, immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body because the body will be destroyed, but the soul never gets destroyed. So you can see this bunch of verses Prabhupada is just reiterated. Thus, in the Bhagavad Gita, in all other Vedic literatures, the superior anti-material particle is accepted as the vital force of the living spirit. So now Prabhupada slowly changes from talking about antimatter, antimatter, antimatter. Now Prabhupada presents spirit. First time Prabhupada is touching soul. This is also called the jiva. Okay. This living principle cannot be generated by any combination of material elements. You cannot put H2O or something and create jiva. There are 8 material principles which are described as inferior energies. They are earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. This is also from Bhagavad Gita. This is from the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. You can see the 4th verse of the 7th chapter. Earth, water, fire, air, mind, intelligence, ego. Altogether, these constitute my separated material energies. Krishna is saying. Apart from this is the living force, the anti-material particle, or the anti-material principle, which is described as a superior energy. These are called energies because they are wielded or controlled by the Supreme Being. Okay, Krishna is the energetic control the energies. So the superior energy is mentioned in the next verse, 7th chapter, 5th verse. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities. Which is all very nicely presented by Srila Prabhupada here. Prabhupada continues to say, for a long time, the materialist was limited within the boundary of 8 material principles I mentioned above. Right? Everything you see around you is nothing but this earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, material components moving around, permutations, combinations. That's it. Now, it is encouraging us to see that he has little preliminary information of the anti-material principle and the anti-material universe. So Prabhupada is saying that, all this while scientists have just been talking about these 8 principles, 8 matter things, but now it's quite encouraging that they're thinking that there must be something more than matter, anti-matter. So we are hoping they can think about spirit. We hope that with the progress of time, the materialists will be able to estimate the value of anti-material world. So this was like almost 50 years of hope, right? So that in time they will agree that there's something spirit, something beyond these 8 qualities of matter. So Prabhupada calls them materialists, the reason being because they're only thinking or working with matter, in which there is no trace of material principles. Of course, the very word anti-material indicates that the principle is opposition to all material qualities. So when you say anti-material, that means it must be something other than these 8 things. There are, of course, the mental speculators who comment upon the anti-material principle. Now, here's a very nice thread that Prabhupada is going to start. Prabhupada is saying that there are other people who give their own ideas, their own suggestions, what this anti-matter is. These fall into 2 main groups, right? And they arrive at 2 different erroneous conclusions. One group, the gross materialists, denies the anti-material principle and admits only in the disintegration of the material combination at a certain stage called death, when everything breaks up. This is one group. They only believe in matter. The other group accepts anti-material principle as being in direct opposition of material principle with its 24 categories. 24. So this actually Prabhupada mentions like this, but actually there's a big science behind this 24. 24 means the 5 senses, the 5 working senses, knowledge acquiring senses, sense objects, all these different things, mind. If you calculate, they come to 24 elements. Okay. This group is known as the Sankhyaites, and they investigate the material principle and analyze them minutely. So they accept there must be some living force. At the end of their investigation, the Sankhyaites finally accept only a transcendental, anti-material, non-active principle. So these are the people who study matter and break down matter and finally agree that within matter, there's just actually a spirit. But however, difficulty arises for all these mental speculators because they speculate with the help of inferior energy. They do not accept information from the superior. In order to realize the real position of anti-material principle, one must rise to the transcendent plane of superior energy, and bhakti yoga is that very activity of spiritual superior energy. So we'll take some discussion here. So what Prabhupada basically is saying, there's one group that only focuses on matter, right? And when matter disintegrates, life ends. So this is generally like some Buddhist theory or other theories where they do not talk much about soul or afterlife or spiritual world, just matter, disintegrated matter. Like many Buddhists would say, just focus and destroy the mind, destroy the body, destroy your existence, then you're free. So they are focused on destruction of matter. There's another group, here Prabhupada names one, but actually there are many. So I'm going to show you here on the screen. These are called the famous 6 systems of philosophy. In Sanskrit, it is called as Shad Darshanas. These are 6 systems of philosophy within the Vedas who kind of speculate about the cause and the effect of this material world, how things are moving, how did life come about. Every one of them gives their own speculation. Out of them, 5 are wrong. Okay. So Prabhupada spoke only on one person, that is Sankhyites, or known as Sankhya. You can see here, Kapil. So let's look at each one of them very briefly. The first is Vaisheshika. Vaisheshika is a branch. Basically, it is atomic theory, right? Where you look everything down to a energy level, photon, packets level kind of things. So the sage who thought about this is Karnad. Okay, that is sage or professor Karnad. Okay, he's like the Vedic professor. So he propounded Vaisheshika philosophy, and then Nyaya or logic, how everything is just logic. Everything in this world is just functioning based on logic. Different phases of creation are happening. So the professor of this school of thought is Gautama Rishi. Okay, Gautama Rishi. So none of them will come to the conclusion of God. None of them will come to conclusion that Jiva and God and all this. They just, these are different philosophies. Therefore, they're called Shat Darshanas. Patanjali is there, yoga, who says yoga is everything has to do with your prana and your mind. That is the focus of his school, his thought. So the focus is not God, the focus is not Jiva, prana and mind, yoga. And then Sankhya, like we saw, Sankhya says that matter is very powerful. Analyze matter, break down matter, and you'll find what is behind matter. Big process, Sankhyites. The word Sankhya means to count. So they count everything, how many matters, how many atoms, how many this, break it down. Then I'm going to jump one cube to the last 6th, which is called Mimamsa. This is by Professor Jaimini. So this Jaimini Rishi, he came up with a theory that everything in this world is cause and effect. Everything here in this world is cause and effect. How things are functioning? Because something caused it. Why that is functioning? Because something caused it. The butterfly effect. So he speaks on the theory Mimamsa, also called as Karma Mimamsa, or Purva Mimamsa. That everything, this whole world is run on karma. Again, no conclusion about God, no conclusion about Jiva. Let's come back to the 5th square. This is the Vedanta philosophy by Veda Vyasa. Here he presents that there is a Jiva, there's an Ishvara, and there's a Prakriti. These 3 are the main stakeholders and players And these three are the subject matters to be known. Right? Everything else is just functioning based on the runnings of these three. They are the main stakeholders. So Vedanta, which we follow, all the theistic school of Vaishnavism and Sanatan Dharma, they follow Vedanta. So like this, even in the Vedas, right? These are called the Shad Darshanas, 6 different systems of philosophies, of which we accept Vedanta. So let's continue. From the platform of the material world, one cannot estimate the real position of the anti-material world. From here, we cannot understand the spiritual world. But the Supreme Lord, who is the controller of both material and anti-material energies, he is the master of both spiritual and material energies, descends out of his counselor's mercy to give us complete information of the anti-material world. So sitting here, we cannot speculate, we cannot understand the spiritual world. But Lord himself has come. He has came and he has given us the information about the spiritual world. In this way, we can know what the anti-material world is. The Supreme Lord and the living entities are both anti-material in quality, that we are informed. So, like I told you just now, Vedanta speaks about 3 things. Jiva, the individual living being, Ishvara, the supreme living being, and Prakriti, material nature. Out of these 3 main stakeholders or subjects to be known, the Ishvara and the Jiva, these are spiritual. Thus, we can have an idea of the Supreme Lord by an elaborate study of the living entities. So, because both are antimatter, if we study the sample, we can understand the whole. Just like when someone cooks rice, they just poke and check 1 grain of rice. If it's cooked, they understand all the rice is cooked. Right? When you test cake, you bake a cake, you put a knife in and you say 1 section, if it's okay, it's fine. You understand. So, to understand God, we just have to look at the sample, which is the soul. If we can understand the quality of the soul, magnify that, that is the quality of God. Every living entity is an individual person. So therefore, the supreme living being must also be the supreme person. This is the first conclusion. When we look at Jiva, we look at, they are all individual. Every one of us is an individual. Every one of us have our own likes, dislikes, tastes, isn't it? No matter how much we try to change or what, we have our own way, quirks, as they say. So similarly, God also must to have his own personality. In the Vedic literatures, the supreme person is properly claimed to be Krishna. The individual person is the Jiva, the supreme person is actually Krishna. The name Krishna indicates the Supreme Lord is the only truth, intelligible name of the highest order. It's a very brilliant. So far in our reading, Prabhupada began with antimatter. In antimatter, he spoke about the energies, spiritual world and spiritual jiva. Then Prabhupada talks about jiva, the spirit soul. Then Prabhupada says to understand God, you look at the jiva. So from jiva, he went to God. Antimatter spoke about jiva, understanding God. Who's that God? Krishna. So beautiful Prabhupada is bringing to. So he said that his perfect name is Krishna. This is the true name, intelligible, understandable, and highest order. He is the controller of both material and anti-material energies. And the very word Krishna signifies that he is the supreme controller. Bhagavad Gita confirms this. There are 2 worlds, the anti-material and material. The material world is composed of inferior qualities of energy divided into 8 principles. So we have seen this, no? 7th chapter, 4th verse and 5th verse. The anti-material world is made of superior quality of energy. Because both the material and anti-material energies are emanations of the supreme transcendence, the personality of Godhead, it is proper to conclude that I, Lord Krishna, am the ultimate cause of all creations and annihilations. Because the Lord of 2 energies, inferior and superior, material and antimatter, manifest the material and anti-material worlds, he is called the supreme absolute truth. Lord Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad Gita. So here we see that Prabhupada, how he's presenting that people are trying to understand small things, this and that, this and that. First, you understand the big picture. You understand who God is, then you can understand everything. But research work means that we try to go from ground level up. It's very tough. But first, you see the summary, right? See the summary, that is God, the summum bonum, the sum of all. See the whole picture. Accept the God, then you can accept the understanding. But from a small level, you try to go up, you may get lost. So here Prabhupada quotes a verse that Prabhupada quotes a verse that Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita. I am, O Arjuna, the highest principle of transcendence, and there is nothing greater than me. Everything that rests on my energies exactly like pearls on a thread. So this is also 7th chapter, right? Let's look back. 7th chapter in 7th verse. O conqueror of wealth, O Dhananjay, O Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. So Prabhupada just basically gave the translation of 4, 5, 6, and then 7. Now, okay, he's going in a flow. Long, long before the discovery of the principle of antimatter and anti-material worlds, this subject was delineated in the pages of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada says nothing new. Your research work is just already, we are already researching before. The Gita itself indicates that its philosophy has been previously been taught to the presiding deity of the sun. So this is the 4th chapter. Okay, let us just look at this quickly here. This is the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says that I instructed this knowledge to the sun god. So now Prabhupada is coming in this thread. The history of the Bhagavad Gita is there in the 4th chapter of Gita. Right? The Gita itself indicates that its philosophy had previously been taught to the presiding deity of the sun, which implies that the principles of Bhagavad Gita were expounded by the Supreme Personality of Godhead long before the battlefield of Kurukshetra, at least 120 million years before. Now modern science has just discovered a fraction of the truth that are available in Bhagavad Gita. So this easy journey to other planets, this first article Prabhupada is writing, he's actually, promoting, presenting, making known how important Bhagavad Gita is, right? The assumption of the anti-material universe is also found in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita also mentions about the spiritual world. And from all the data available, it is to be assumed. So it is interesting, no? Without the slightest doubt that the anti-material world is situated in the anti-material sky. So from all the data, which data? Basically shlokas. Now from all the shloka that is available, we understand that it's in a spiritual world. The sky which is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita is Sanatan Dham, or eternal nature. Exactly as material atoms create the material world, the anti-material atoms create the anti-material world with all its paraphernalia. The anti-material world is inhabited by anti-material living beings. So anti-material world, anti-material particles, anti-material living beings. In the anti-material world, there is no inert matter. There is no dead matter. Everything in this world is dead matter. Everything there is a living principle. Because it has to be the opposite. If this world, everything is dead, actually. Like I told you before, right? We don't see this pen drive growing, talking, moving. So it's dead. So everything there must be alive. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead in that region is God himself. The denizens of the anti-material world possess eternal life, eternal knowledge, and eternal bliss. This is Satchit Ananda. In other words, they have all the qualifications of God. So everyone in the spiritual world also have the same qualities of God. It's just that they are in a small capacity and Lord is in a larger capacity. Right? Everything else is a sample. In the material world, the topmost planet is called Satyaloka. So it is in the material world now. Or Brahmaloka. Beings of the greatest talents live on this planet. So your Prabhupada is contrasting in the material world, the topmost place, the best of all creation is Brahmaloka, where Lord Brahma stays. And the smartest, most enlightened, most pure people take birth there. The presiding deity of Brahmaloka is Brahma, the first created living being in this material world. Brahma is the living being like so many of us, but he is the most talented personality within this material world. He is also a living being, but he has more talent, more capabilities. He is not so talented that he is in the category of God. It's not that he's superhuman. It's not that, sorry, they're not that he's divine like God, but he's like, you can consider superhuman, better than us. But he is in the category of those living entities directly dominated by God. God and the living entities both belong to the anti-material world. The scientists, therefore, would be rendering service to everyone by researching the constitution of the anti-material world, how it is administered, how things are going shaped there, who are the presiding personalities, so on. Of the Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam deals elaborately with these matters. The Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary study of Srimad Bhagavatam. The Prabhupada is now presenting all these books. You want to understand the material world, the whole material and spiritual worlds, then look at the Bhagavatam. Then what is Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita is a preliminary study. First you study Bhagavad Gita. These two important books of knowledge should be thoroughly studied by all men in the scientific world. And, at this time, Prabhupada is writing this, future Prabhupada will be writing Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam also for everyone. These books would give many clues to scientific progress and would indicate many new discoveries. So Prabhupada also had always presented Srimad Bhagavatam as the encyclopedia, the scientific encyclopedia. You want to know about embryology, it is there in Bhagavatam. You want to know about time and space calculation, it is there in Bhagavatam. You want to know about anthropology, sociology, anything kind of understanding, you can find it in Srimad Bhagavatam. Psychology even. The transcendentalists and the materialists are two distinct class of men. The transcendentalist gathers knowledge from authoritative scriptures like Vedas. The Vedic literature is received from authoritative sources which are in line to the transcendental disciplic succession. The disciplic succession called parampara is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that hundreds of thousands of years ago, Gita was spoken to the presiding deity of the sun. Prabhupada comes back now to 4th chapter here, right? 1st and 2nd verse. That this was spoken in a chain of disciplic succession. See, parampara, evam parampara praptam. So Krishna spoke this millions and millions of years ago to the sun god, who delivered this knowledge to his son, Manu, from whom the present generation of man has descended. So mankind, human, has come from the word Manu. In Sanskrit, it's called Manushya. Manushya means coming of Manu. Manu, in his turn, delivered the transcendental knowledge to his son, King Ikshvaku, who is the forefather of the dynasty in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Rama, appeared, the Surya Vamsha. This long chain of disciplic succession was broken during the Advent period of Lord Krishna, some 5,000 years ago. His knowledge was lost. And for this reason, Krishna restarted Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, thereby making him the first disciple of knowledge in this age. Knowledge is the same, new branch has started. So here Krishna actually says, this knowledge has been broken and therefore the signs appear to be lost. And now I'm telling the same signs to you, Arjuna, because you are my friend as well as my devotee. So you see, Prabhupada again is going at a flow here. The transcendentalists of this age, therefore, is in the disciplic succession line that starts with Arjuna. Without troubling himself with materialistic research work, the transcendentalist acquires the truth concerning matter and antimatter in the most perfect way. So the transcendentalist, the devotee, right? He also can understand matter and antimatter. He does not have to produce articles. He does not have to produce paper, journals, conference papers, or do much research. He takes shelter of the parampara, takes shelter of the spiritual knowledge. And from that, one understands the constitution of this world and other worlds. True disciplic succession, and therefore saves himself much botheration. Science have been researching last 70 years. Those scientists then are dead now, gone, right? Where are they now? What has happened to the anti-material particle? So Prabhupada is saying, be intelligent, take shelter of the Shastra, and you can become a perfected scientist in one life. Not just keep publishing and hoping that future scientists will get the work done. You get it done in one life by taking shelter of the Vedas. Let's read one more paragraph before we stop. The gross materialists, however, do not believe in the anti-material worlds of the personality of Godhead. They are therefore unfortunate creatures. Sadly, the people who are interested in matter, the scientists and philosophers, they are not agreeing or accepting, right, the anti-material world of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, they are unfortunate, although sometimes very talented, educated, and advanced. Prabhupada agrees, right? They are quite smart, nice people, but unfortunate. They are bewildered by the influence of material manifestation and are devoid of knowledge of things anti-material. It is a good sign, therefore, that the materialistic scientists are gradually progressing toward the region of anti-material world. Of course, since then, there was not much talk or discovery or research into this. It may be even possible for them to make a sufficient progress to able to know the details of this anti-material world, hopefully, where the personality of Godhead resides as the predominating figure and where the living entities live with him and serve him. The living entities who serve God are equal to in quality to him, but at the same time, they are predominated as servitors, right? They're equal in quality, but they're subservient. In the anti-material world, there is no difference between the predominated and predominator. The relationship is in perfection without any tinge of materialism. So we say that the jiva is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. The moment one hears this, one says, oh, subordination, that means Lord is enjoying more and the jiva is enjoying less. No. Because the spiritual world, the anti-material world is perfect, right? The amount of enjoyment the predominator or the predominated experience is the same. As much God is enjoying, the jiva also can enjoy, although his quantity or his capacity is limited, but with the Lord, he can enjoy as much the Lord is enjoying. So we'll stop here and we will take the next section in our next reading. Like I said, it's a long chapter. We'll take it parts by parts, but very interesting how Prabhupada is slowly giving this progression. So thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki